Welcome to part 4 of lecture 10. In this part we're going to look at the three versions of multi-divisional structure and how they relate to the different diversification strategies. So we're linking it to corporate strategy and the three types of diversification we discussed in the week on corporate strategy. Three forms of multi-divisional structure are the cooperative form, the strategic business unit form, and the competitive form. Competitive form is sometimes known as the holding company form. The cooperative form is a structure in which horizontal integration is used to bring about interdivisional cooperation. So you have integration mechanisms to support cooperation and sharing of tangible and intangible resources between the different business units, the different businesses in the organisation. And the corporate head office emphasises strategic planning and human resources and aims to cooperate and foster cooperation between the various divisions. Let me emphasise as well that one of the mechanisms that you can use to foster cooperation is a corporate level matrix structure, which is an extension of the business level matrix structures we've discussed and gave you an example of earlier. In the cooperative form, R&D and normally marketing are centralised and rewards are subjective and tend to emphasise cooperations between the different components and the overall corporate performance rather than just the individual divisional performance. So this is an example of a cooperative structure. As you can see, we have a CEO and specific central options, government affairs, legal affairs, corporate processes of marketing, finance, human resources, planning, and R&D, and then separate, this is a cooperative form built around products, separate product divisions with linkages between them designating that they're cooperating. So, structural integration between the different levels of the different divisions improves their performance. Corporate office emphasises centralised planning, centralised human resources, centralised marketing, and fosters cooperation between the divisions. Research and development is often centralised, though sometimes it can be decentralised to a particular product division or divisions, as long as that R&D and the knowledge gained from that R&D is shared across the organisations. Rewards are a mixture of subjective and objective that link to overall corporate performance, and the subjective component of that is how do you link the contribution made to other divisions by your division to the overall corporate performance, and culture emphasises cooperation and sharing. And you can see how that links back to our discussion in week 6 of corporate level strategy. Second structure is this SBU form. The strategic business form has 3 levels. You have a corporate headquarters, you have strategic business units, and you have SBU divisions. If you look at our discussion of Woolworths Holdings South Africa, we can see that effectively they have a corporate headquarters, they have a strategic business unit, and within those strategic business units they have different divisions. The corporate headquarters is in South Africa. The strategic business units are the department stores, the Woolworths South Africa, Woolworths African operations, David Jones, and their Country Road Group. Within the Country Road Group, there are multiple divisions, SBU divisions. Within David Jones, it's just one division. Within South Africa, we saw there were 3 divisions: their supermarkets, their department stores, and their financial services. Divisions are related in terms of shared products or markets or both. You use the strategic business unit form to implement a related linked strategy. The divisions of one SBU may have little in common with the divisions of other SBUs, and the complexity of the SBU structure is reflected by the organisation's size and product and market diversification. So here we have just a broad example of those areas. And on my next slide, we talk about these 5 things. Structural integration among divisions within SBUs, but independence between the SBUs. Strategic planning may be prominently linked. Strategic planning is a really important function of the organisation and tends to happen at both the head office and the SBU level. Each SBU often has its own budget to foster integration to an extent, but it also is aiming at producing its own performance. And corporate headquarters staff serve as consultants and coaches to the divisions, and may or may not tend to not have input into product strategy, or at least not as much input into product strategy as occurs in the cooperative form. Divisions don't share common strengths, and integration devices cannot be used in this M-form structure. So sometimes the new evolved version of Wesfarmers is considered an SBU form. When you're trying to implement the SBU form in an unrelated I'll say that sentence again. The third form of M-form, multi-divisional, is the holding company form or the conglomerate form. It's used to implement a related linked or an unrelated strategy. Each SBU has its own budget to foster integration. Corporate head office. I've just made a terrible error in what I've just said. What I was trying to say is that the final way that those integrations can occur is through consultancy and support. I could take out that little bit of confusion out, but by the time I take it out and edit it, I won't get the slides up in time to our deadline. So I'm going to leave that little bit of unclarity there. Just understand that I was talking about related constraint and related linked in that last discussion. I'm now going to start talking about the holding company form, the competitive form of the structure. The competitive forms complete independence between the different divisions. Divisions do not share common corporate strengths. Integration devices cannot be used, so they function as separate business. So performance measurement is about the separate businesses. Emphasize cooperation between the separate components. This emphasizes competition between the separate components rather than competition. And this gives you 3 benefits: flexibility, challenges to the status quo, and efficient resource allocation and motivation. So this is Sony's organisational chart from a little while ago. We have a global hub, but we have separate, competing, disconnected businesses below it. So, having rushed to that point, let's give a clear summary, an important slide, a clear summary of how we align structure with the different forms. So, a list of the different structural characteristics and what we do in each form. The M form, the related constrained form, has centralized corporate office, extensive integration, emphasizes subjective criteria, and linked to an overall corporate performance rather than individual divisional performance. The M form is for related linked, partially centralized, moderate integration, use of a mixture of subjective, strategic, and financial criteria, and mixed linkages between the corporate and SBUs. And the competitive form is used in the unrelated diversification strategy, decentralized divisions, non-existent integration mechanisms, emphasizes financial criteria, and linked to divisional performance. Okay, so that's the end of part 4. Sorry for a little bit of confusion in the middle as I was describing the 3 different forms. particularly when I was talking about the M form, the multi-divisional form. But hopefully you now understand the M4 multi-divisional SBU form clearly and how it differentiates from the holding company form, the competitive form, and the cooperative form at the other two extremes. There's some videos that explain those things in more detail. I want you also to spend some time ensuring that you've communicated with your team members. There is no Moodle forum this week because the time you should be spending on your Moodle forum, would have spent on your Moodle forum, I want you to spend on your group work for your group assignment. Okay, so that's the end of part 4. See you in the tutorials, in the Zoom tutorials. Stay safe.